Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to OpenMicVO on this beautiful Memorial Day weekend. There's only a small group of us here tonight. There's only 7 of us in total. And I assume that that is either because A, people weren't that interested in the topic, or B, because everyone's out watching fireworks. So I'm going to suggest we go for it anyway. And if you have any questions at all about home studios, and I think that we can broaden it beyond that if helpful, just because there's so few of us around tonight. I'm not going to go through all the rules like I normally do. I think that those of you who I can see are on the line with us tonight are all pretty familiar with them. But I will start to unmute people here, and just please keep yourself muted unless you're actively participating in the conversation. There's a couple of you I can't unmute, and that's because you're using an old version of the Zoom software. And what it means you have to do if you want to actually participate tonight, you need to exit the webinar, go to zoom.us/downloads, I think it is, install the latest version of the Zoom software, and then come on back to the webinar. It'll only take you 3 or 4 minutes. So if you want to participate, you're going to need to do that. Otherwise, if you just want to listen in, you can do that without upgrading.
Graham, I want to ask you a question.
Hey, JD.
Hi there. Did I miss something last week, or what? Was there was there one last week on OpenMicVO, or was there not?
There was a technical glitch, and actually 2 different technical glitches. One of them was user error, and that's on my part, where the promotional email that usually goes out Sunday, afternoons or supper hour, didn't get sent. So I think that a fair amount of people didn't realize that there was even going to be one. And then the second issue was, I think that I was signed in to the wrong webinar, because several people have mentioned to me that they were there and waiting, yet when I was signed in, there was 0 participants, 0 attendees. So I must have been in the wrong place, or else you guys all were.
I had a similar experience. I was waiting and waiting and waiting and quit and came back and quit and came back and was in purgatory, so I felt.
Anyway, I apologize for that, but we are all here tonight. And again, there's just a small group of us because of the being the long holiday weekend. So, I had suggested that the theme tonight would be home studios, but happy to open it up. If anyone has any questions at all about voiceover, any topic, glad to entertain them. And if it's too quiet, then we'll just call it a night and pick it up again next week when it's not a holiday weekend.
Well, I'll throw out the first softball since I don't know who's out there with us because I'm driving right now. But a well-known voice actress that we all know probably just recently got an Avalon. Is it an MX5? Is that it? I'm not sure, an M5. And I'm curious about that myself for my own personal home studio. It's one of those gear crush things. So somebody want to respond to that?
Well, I have some experience with the M5. It's a dynamite preamp. It's very, very, very clean. There's lots of people pick preamplifiers because they like a specific characteristic that the preamplifier adds to the sound. Like, different preamplifiers sound a little different. Like, people like the old Neve 1073 preamps because there's a certain Neve sound that it adds. The thing about the Avalon M5 is that it's a completely neutral preamp. It adds nothing. All it does is very cleanly amplify the signal, which is really technically what a preamp is supposed to do. So if you've got a really good signal going in, it will very faithfully reproduce that signal and send it to your DAW. And the other thing is that it's built like a tank. I've never known anybody that has ever had a problem with an M5. Uh, it's quite different than the Avalon 737, which is the other Avalon preamp, which lots of people like. It's the complete opposite. It has a ton of character. It uses vacuum tubes. It has a very distinct sound. It adds a certain roundness, a certain warmth to the audio, where the M5 almost sounds clinical because it's not adding anything. So that's my 2 cents on the M5. Anyone else here have any experience with an M5?
Thanks for that. I have a clearer understanding of it now. Thank you,
Yeah.
Graham.
Yeah, it's built like a tank, man. You buy one, you don't hesitate to buy one on the used market if you were in the market for one, because as long as it's been, reasonably well taken care of, it'll last you for decades. It's really built solidly. Just unmuting a few people that have just joined us.
Yeah, I don't know how many more decades I've got, but I'll keep that in mind.
Well, it would serve you well, for sure. So again, tonight's theme is home studios, but because we've got a very small group tonight, we're willing to entertain any questions about the voiceover biz, performance, home studios, business development, whatever's on your mind when it comes to voiceover. Let's open up the table, and you're welcome to ask any questions you might have.
I'm going to break the silence here, Graham.
Hello, how are you?
Great, how are you?
Good.
I just wondered how your sessions went a couple of weeks ago. You sound much better.
Oh, I'm feeling much better. My voice is still not 100%. There's still a little bit of gravel and grit there from that cold, but I am feeling much better. And the sessions, surprisingly, the first of the 2 sessions was only a 30-second spot. So I was able to kind of, by drinking lots of water and, just managing to get my way through it, we were able to get ourselves through that session okay. And the second session that day, actually, the subject matter really lent itself to a bit of additional, grit and gravel in my voice. So even though I sounded a little worse for wear, because the particular subject matter, it was a truck commercial, it actually lent itself okay. So I was able to get my way through it. But thank you very much for asking.
I'm glad to hear that. That's wonderful, and it kind of speaks to something that I've kind of noticed. I've mentioned before that I come more from a musical background, and going into voiceover, and that's one of the things that I have found has been a little bit of a slight separation between the two. Is as a singer, you work so much on tone and tonal quality of your voice, and I know that's important in voiceover too. But there's that element of the emotion, the emotional read, and that's in singing as well. Of course, you have to be, emoting properly for the piece of music that you're singing. But I found it's been a slightly more inconsequential item. If you're having a little bit of a rough voice day, it's more about the read.
Yes, but I think as voice actors, we should be paying more attention, like singers do, to our tone. I think we should be more carefully picking and choosing. What is it that you're going to record first thing in the morning before your voice really warms up? And it might have a little bit of a frogginess to it or a little bit of more texture versus something later in the day when it might be cleaner because you've been using it more. I think that we should be paying more attention to tone than we really do. And I think that there are lessons that we can learn from singers like you when it comes to, using the tonality in our voice as another tool in order to, affect the read than we do.
I agree, and I'm happy to hear you say that, because I think it's given me a little bit of an edge, actually, that I can call upon certain tonal qualities of my voice when I need to, based on the project. And it kind of, I had one vocal instructor explain it in terms of colors, adding, you know, certain colors in your voice. And that's maybe a bit abstract, but, you know, when you're working on creative projects, it really all leads back to the emotion anyway, really ultimately as the foundation. But it is really fun to have some tools at your disposal, you know, learning to, you know, raise your soft palate or drop your embouchure or do a certain breathing technique that you know is going to produce a certain sound that that kind of, as I say, gives you that little bit of an edge, or even just add something different to the read, especially in an audition kind of format. So I'm glad it went well. Glad to hear you're doing much better.
I am doing much better, but I tell you, it's been hanging on. I still have an annoying hacking dry cough that it's been around for like 3 weeks now. I've had enough. Go away.
Yeah, that's really frustrating. And I don't know if you tried the steam idea, but it's definitely on the top of my list, and one worth trying, one way or another.
Thank you so much, Haley.
Thanks, Graham.
Who else has got questions for us tonight? Anything to do with voiceover? I mean, our theme was home studios, but again, we have a small group with us tonight. There's 10 of us in total. So certainly willing to open it up to any question or any voiceover topic that you might have. And
Hi, Graham.
Hey, Chris.
Glad you are feeling better, sir. I rode in the same boat with you on that one.
Yeah, it's been
had,
hanging on, man. It's been hanging on.
Yeah, well, I had what I thought was a head and chest cold, which turned out to be bronchitis. Now, mind you, I couldn't work, but I took the opportunity to actually do a small plug for myself on Instagram, just laid up. And I did. It was that moment where I thought, you know, I'm just gonna express my inner Godfather here, because that's where I was vocally. I was like, head and chest cold, head and chest. What have I done to make you treat me with such disrespect?
That's pretty good.
And I actually got a client off of that one.
That's pretty good, I got to tell you.
So I mean, yeah, there may be moments where you're laid up. That's the ball game as far as like actually being able to sit down in front of the mic and perhaps cross-contaminate it so it can come back on you later, like smallpox or something like that. But at the same time, you know, there are other things we could be doing. You know, marketing is one of them, apparently. So.
Yeah, it does give us an opportunity to do other stuff that tends to get neglected, marketing as an example. But for a while there, I was just feeling so crappy, I didn't even want to do that.
Oh, yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, I was completely laid back in the easy chair when I did that video.
Yeah.
But I am glad you're feeling better, though, buddy.
Thank you so much. That's sweet of you guys to say. I do appreciate the good vibes.
Hi, Graham.
Hello, how you doing, EJ?
Okay, Graham. I have a quick question about my my auditions. I'm a newbie, getting started here. And,
well, welcome.
Thank you. I have a noise floor in my studio of about 51.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very, very, very low frequency hum that actually goes throughout my building. Now, I was wondering if I add a kiss of RX6, if that would be okay, because it does take care of the problem.
Yeah, RX6 actually has a specific hum remover plugin that works amazingly well. I'm a big believer in RX6. The thing about that piece of software, though, is that it needs to be used with a gentle touch. In that I often find that applying just a very minimal amount of noise reduction, no matter whether it's hum removal or the decrackle maybe plugin, but applying a very minimal amount and running it through twice is often better than running it through once, but with a heavier hand. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
Yeah. So I'm a big believer in and supporter of the Izotope RX6 noise reduction package of software, as long as you use it with a very light touch.
Right.
Because it can ruin your takes. There's no doubt it can ruin an audition if any of those plugins is used with too heavy a hand. You'll sound terrible. So as long as you use it lightly, the hum remover works perfectly. So definitely do recommend it for that purpose.
Is that even acceptable if a client wants no processing whatsoever?
I think that if you use it light enough so that it's not immediately evident that you've used it,
Okay.
and that it fixes a specific, if the client's going to hear a 60 hertz hum, that's not going to be acceptable to them.
Okay.
If you use a very light amount of noise reduction, like the hum remover from RX6, and it reduces the hum but doesn't impact the rest of your performance, then I think that it's the right thing to do, even if they've said, please, no processing. I think what they're saying when they say, please, no processing, they're saying, please give us a completely clean file.
Okay.
And if that's the case, then I think the onus is on you to remove that hum.
Great. Thank you.
Make sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
Very cool.
I have another question. I actually have a question for you, Brad. Along that vein, I too had a horrendous hum in my studio, which I solved by getting a DBX 286S. And what I do with it is, it's that if you're familiar with that particular device,
Yeah, I know well.
Right. So what I did with that was that I kind of gently gated that noise so that it's transparent in the sense you don't hear a gate coming on and off.
Yeah. Just remember though, if it's something like a hum, that even the gate, like using the expander, that DBX unit, will remove the hum in between each of your phrases or each of your words, but it will
Right, it needs to be wrapped around the words.
It will not remove the hum from when you're actually speaking. So the hum could very well still be evident because it's still going to be there while you're speaking. And in fact, if anything, it might sometimes become more evident because it's there, then it's gone. Then it's there, then it's gone. As compared to the hum remover in Izotope, as an example, that removes it from the entire file, not just in between phrases and sentences.
By just subtracting that frequency altogether.
That's right. And it's even a little more sophisticated than just taking away the frequency. It actually analyzes the hum and will remove the hum without removing your vocal material that might even still be in the same frequency.
Oh, okay.
So it's quite sophisticated, the algorithms that they use. So if you were telling me that you had like, I don't know, maybe there's a, automobile noise or something, although, really at the end of the day, it's all the same. I guess my only comment is just make sure that the noise, whatever it is, whether it's a hum, whether it's, other background noise, is not just being removed. If it is only being removed between phrases and sentences, make sure that it's not evident when it's behind your voice, if that makes sense.
Right. I'm sorry, I characterized it as a hum. It was less of a hum and more of a hiss. That hiss that the mic picks up whenever it's on, and it's picked up to where you need to be for your levels.
Yep.
So it for the most part, as far as I can tell, and you listen to your own stuff, you get kind of earblind, but for the most part, it seems to have solved the problem because it quieted that hiss so that I don't have that from the preamp being up as high as it is, and or the gain being up as high as it is. So I don't have that either in the silence or apparently in the active take itself. If that makes any sense.
Yep, it does. It does.
So yeah, I mean I struggled with the whole noise floor issue for like years. And then I got that particular piece of Miracle, and I was like, yes, where have you been all my life?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I use a little bit of noise gating or expansion here in my studio as well. My studio has I mean, the acoustic in my studio is fairly good, but it's not soundproof. So I do get like rumble from the streetcar that goes by fairly close by my house, and you know, I'm not very far from Toronto's Pearson International Airport, so sometimes I'll get airplane noise. So I do a little bit of gating as well, but again, as I said, with the using the Izotope noise removal stuff for hum, just use it with a very, very light touch. You certainly don't want to hear the gate kind of opening and closing.
Right. And thank you very much for that advice. I try to keep it as light as possible, only as much as it takes to affect that particular noise. You know, so, but yeah, I'll definitely reevaluate just to make sure.
Fantastic. Once again, everybody, because it's a long holiday weekend, our number of attendees tonight is fairly small. There's only 11 of us in total, and the theme tonight is home studios. But because there's such a small group of us, certainly happy to entertain any questions about voiceover, whether it's business development or performance questions. Certainly curious to hear what some of you have to ask and what some of you have to offer when it comes to possible answers to these questions as well. So again, we're going to open it up, and if because there's so few of us, you know, we're not getting a lot of activity, then maybe we'll just call it a night and pick it up again next week when we're not, you know, fighting a long weekend and fireworks.
Graham?
Yes.
EJ again.
Hey, EJ.
Problem, I did not have this question until this Zoom meeting. I'm working, I have a couple of preamps. I've got the Audient ID14, and my favorite new buddy is the Yamaha AG03.
Mm-hmm.
And I have not had this problem before, but I'm set up just as I'm always set up, but I cannot hear, I can hear you through my headphones, but I can't hear myself. And I tried loop back and the impact in the input mix. Are you familiar with this Yamaha?
Yeah, I've got one sitting here right next to me. Hang on a second. Literally have it right next to me. Just let me take a look at the front of it here and see if I can help you.
Okay.
You're coming through much better now.
Well, I moved my mic.
So when you have your mic plugged into the AG03, you're turning up the little monitor button in the lower right-hand corner.
Yes.
You are uh, 48. You're turning up the gain.
Okay.
So the only button that
I think I've got it. I think I've got it.
What's that?
I had my monitor muted. There, see the monitor? There's a monitor mute button over here, just above the monitor knob.
Yes. Yep.
Where I can talk to you with my monitors wide open, and it mutes it.
Correct.
But it also mutes me.
So, and when you unmute it, you can hear yourself okay.
I can hear okay now.
There you go.
Thank you.
No problem. I'm not sure I helped very much, but at least we got our way through.
Well, you listened.
Just unmuting a few people who've just joined us in the last couple of minutes, just to bring you those of you who just joined us, to bring you up to speed, we've got a fairly small crew here tonight. We've got 13 of us in total. And so what we've decided to do is to take our home studio theme, which we're certainly happy to entertain questions about home studios, but we're expanding that to any questions with regards to voiceover, because there's so few of us. Want to make sure that those of us who are here all get the most benefit that we possibly can from the session. So once again, any questions with regards to voiceover performance, business development, home studios, of course, any questions are welcome tonight.
It's me again.
Graham,
Yes, Chris,
I have another question for you.
please.
The school of thought on compression, as it applies to, say, auditions and what have you. Now, I use very light compression, usually only 2 to 1. However, or 2.5 to 1 as the case may be. However, I have been kind of eye stalking people's settings as I watch YouTube videos and what have you. And I've seen people with settings as high as 24 to 1, which makes no sense. That's insane to me. But at the same time, I've never actually made a decision for compression being that high, so I don't know what effect that has on the recording. Why would one do that? I mean, granted, he was doing like radio imaging, so he may have been engaging in some level of effects there. But
Exactly. When you use compression at that extreme level, it's not a compressor anymore, it's a limiter. And what you can add extreme levels of compression as long as the threshold is set very, very high. So basically, it's just knocking the peaks off the top of your signal, if that makes sense, versus using a much a lower ratio like 2 or 2.5 to 1. But if you have it set down at the threshold at minus 18 dB or something like that, you're actually compressing your signal much more at 2.5 ratio, but with a very low threshold, than you are with 24 ratio, but an extremely high threshold. If you followed that.
well, I think I do. And what I usually do is I'll set my threshold to about 24, 25, and then I'll do it at 2.5 to 1. If I were still doing it manually with the DBX, I can just kind of fool with the knobs a little bit, and it's just about where I need it to be. But there was a point, and sometimes still, if I need to do what I like to call, if I engage in trying to fix a problem by trying to come up with a Barney Rubble solution to a Star Trek problem, then I might go in and do that manually. And I've always wondered, am I compressing correctly? Because I'm never quite sure. Because the schools of thought on that are varied.
So here's my thoughts on compression. Is that I think the onus is on us to make our auditions sound as good as we possibly can. And we want to sound at least as, I'm trying to pick the right word here.
All right, that's how you play it.
Just a note to those of you who are online with us tonight, if you're actively participating in the conversation, totally cool. If you're not actively participating in the conversation, if you could just mute yourself using that little mute button in the lower left-hand corner of your Zoom meeting window, that'd be awesome. And that way we don't have any problems with background noise and echo and stuff like that. That's awesome. Thanks. So compression. I think we want to sound as professional as we possibly can when it comes to presenting our auditions. On the other hand, when we're doing real jobs, when we're producing real work that's going to go to a production studio somewhere, we want to do as little processing as possible, because the less processing we do gives the actual recording engineer more latitude to do more work at his or her end, and they much prefer that generally. If they're going to add compression, they'd rather them doing it than us doing it and sending them a highly compressed file. But when it comes to auditions, we want to sound as professional as we possibly can. So I'm not a big supporter of this idea of no, don't add any processing to your auditions. I say the hell with that. I actually compress my auditions a fair amount, like a reasonable amount. I don't, add broad compression across the entire, I have a fairly high threshold, I guess is what I'm saying. But once I hit a certain threshold, I compress fairly hard. And I do that because I want my audition to sound loud to the ear of whoever it is that's going to be evaluating my audition. The human ear, for better or for worse, perceives loud as better. So if my audition is 2 dB overall louder or 3 dB louder overall than the audition that was ahead of me and the audition that's behind me, I already have a little bit of an advantage. So, I'm not a big supporter of the school of thought that says, no, don't compress your auditions. I actually do compress my auditions. I don't compress my finished work very much. Because I want to give the client the ability to compress as much or as little as they prefer. Does that follow?
That's usually a client by client type of deal. That's part of the conversation you should probably have with them. I mean, my process is usually, especially when I'm doing it manually, I would, check my levels, everything is squared away. Then I would record, then bring it up to a negative 0.1, limit it to a negative 3. That way, it's that it gives them that headroom, but it's as loud as it's going to be.
And that's exactly what I do. I normalize to 0.1 and then I limit at -3. That's exactly the same process I do.
Well, look at me. I completely stupided into that. It's good for me.
I wouldn't say you stupided into it. It sounds like you know what you're doing. So
we'll go with that then.
It's the exact same process I use, and it seems to work for me. So I'm happy with it.
Excellent.
Yeah. Who else has got questions for us?
Graham?
Yes.
Yeah, EJ again. Piggybacking on what was just said about the compression, I will not touch compressor because my knowledge base is not that great with it. And as far as EQ, I won't touch that anymore because after 30-something years of radio, my ears just aren't the same. And so stacks. Now, for commercial, a commercial stack, fine. But would that be okay? Do I need another for narration, or could I just go with the commercial stack?
I think that there are, some people out there that would suggest that, oh no, you'd want to have a different stack for narration. Mm-hmm. I got to tell you, I do pretty much the same thing to everything that I do.
Okay.
I don't, whether it's a commercial read, because most of my commercial, I don't do typically big, Sunday, big retail reads. That's not really my thing. So given that most of my commercial reads tend to be fairly conversational anyway, I don't really make a distinction between my commercial reads and narrative stuff. I usually process them the same.
Okay. Coming from you, that's a go.
Well, I don't think I'm any, big authority, but George Whittam did one of my original stacks that I still use. And, he agreed with me at the time that using the same processing chain for both my narrative stuff and my commercial stuff sounded fine to him. So now there's a guy you can respect what he has to say.
I do. Okay, thank you, Graham.
Sorry, I'm just making a couple notes here. Who else has got a question for us? Those of you who just joined us want to make mention that it's a fairly small group with us tonight because of the holiday weekend. And the theme is home studios, but we're certainly welcoming questions on any voiceover topic tonight. Again, there's a fairly small group. We want to make sure that we all get as much learning as possible out of the time we're investing here. So don't feel that you have to limit your questions to home studio production. Who's got a question for us?
Graham.
Yes.
And we're back. That last question actually reminded me of something. EQ, good for the audition, bad for the actual work?
I do zero EQ. I have never done anything from an EQ standpoint.
Very rarely do I do it now. Sometimes, less now with my auditions. I used to do it with my auditions, but I very rarely turn in finished work this way. But I was working with
most people are looking for a very natural read, and given that they're looking for the natural read, the old days of wanting to sound like an FM radio announcer and the big booming bass, and it's just not what's being looked for. In fact, I think the only real purpose for EQ for us is to fix things that are wrong. And, if we have a booth that is boomy, as an example, if anything, we want to reduce the bass, not increase it. Or maybe, as we were speaking earlier, we have a hum at a very specific frequency. It's exactly at 60 hertz, and maybe we want to notch out the 60 hertz frequency. Those are the only reasons to use EQ, I think, as voice actors. We shouldn't really be trying to, sweeten our voice by using EQ. It's just not what clients nowadays are looking for. They want something that sounds natural. Dave G asks, so low pass is okay. I assume you mean either high pass. You probably mean high pass, which means the low frequencies get filtered and the high frequencies pass. And yes, a high pass filter is definitely fine. I have one that's on all the time it's set at about 80 hertz. So anything below 80 hertz is just completely gone in all of my files. That's perfectly fine, but I wouldn't be messing around like adding 3 dB at 100 hertz or something like that because you think your voice sounds fuller. Yeah, just not the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, the only time I really use EQ is if I'm actually adding a music bed or something. Because
in that case, because now you're into actual production, totally different thing. And you definitely would need to use EQ in some of those circumstances to ensure that the vocal track stands out and cuts through the mix.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Who's next?
Exactly.
Graham. Hey, Graham.
Hello.
How are you? I wanted to tag on to what you were just talking about, since interesting topic. You were mentioning that you do normalization and compression.
Yes.
Why both?
Because the reason, like when I just record my my vocal track, I'm not really processing it at that point. So there's going to be areas in my vocal track, maybe there's a T or a K or something that I hit particularly hard, and it makes quite a peak in level at that one particular syllable. So what happens is if you normalize that to minus 0.1 dB, it's going to raise the entire track, but comparatively, the rest of the track, except that one errant peak that I created, is not going to get raised very much. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
it does. So even in an audition, then when you were talking about making it louder, the normalization is just evening it out at that point, and then you're using the compression to bring the whole thing up.
So what I'm doing is it's actually the opposite. I'm using normalization to bring the whole thing up, and then I'm knocking off those peaks by compressing at -3 dB.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. You're welcome. Dave is asking, what percentage of folks out there have a vocal booth? And I think that that's a good question, because there's lots of people that are making do and doing just fine with more makeshift setups, like using walk-in closets and stuff. I mean, I've been a full-time voice actor now for 8 years, and I don't have a standalone booth. Just to my right here, you can't see it because it's off camera, but just to my right is an old, I live in a fairly old house. It was built about 100 years ago, and it's the old kind of plaster and lath construction. So there's an old closet next to me that I have acoustically treated inside with foam and bass traps, but it's not a custom built vocal booth. It's just a closet that I've converted. Who out there, there's about, 15 of us online right now. Who's got a vocal booth versus who's using, just either using like a Harlan Hogan, portable vocal booth, or you're using a walk-in closet or something like that?
Well, actually, Graham, I live on Fort Knox in what was barracks at one time. So my house has what I would call a utility room. It's basically a room with no purpose and no windows whatsoever. So I just padded it out because I got tired of working out of closets. And then you have the old joke between the wife and the kid. Oh, look, Chris is coming out of the closet again. So I got tired of enduring all of that and working under blankets and whatnot. So when we got to the house and I showed her the walk-in closet, we walked past that utility room and said, "Oh, Jib, studio."
Yeah.
So now I have it's right off the hall, and I hang a little sign out there that glows that says "Recording in process." Shut up.
Paula adds that she's using a treated corner of her room and uses sound absorbing panels that she built, which is awesome. And I know George Whittam has set up many studios like that, where, just a corner of a bedroom and work, add panels just in the corner and have the mic facing out into the open room, and that can sound just fine. Haley's saying that she has a custom-built vocal booth in her garage. I wish we were so lucky as to be able to have a custom-built booth like that. That's awesome, Haley. Who else has got a question, or who else has got a comment or some sort of guidance on whether they use a vocal booth or whether they have some other setup in their house? EJ's saying that he's, I know what he's done here. He's taken PVC piping and built like a cube out of PVC piping and then hung moving blankets over it. George Whittam and Dan Leonard specifically from VOBS, Voiceover Body Shop, are big proponents of using moving blankets and PVC frames to hang them off of. Makes a ton of sense and actually works really well in many cases. Dave is asking, noise floor in your booth, does it matter beyond -62 dB? And I can tell you, if you've got a -62 dB noise floor, you've got nothing to worry about. I don't think anybody is going to have any problems with a -62 dB noise floor. I think anything quieter than -50 dB in most cases is going to be just fine. Has anybody any other experience with noise floors, and anyone else have any recommendations on what they think a suitable noise floor is?
Graham?
Yes.
Hi, I have a question about noise floor.
Sure.
So I am working currently out of a walk-in closet or just a small closet, and I've hung some acoustic panels on the walls and kind of the shelf above me to mute, kind of muffle some of the sound or the reflection. And I have a giant comforter behind me, but I still can't really get my noise floor down without, I mean, it's high, and I have my door closed. I have turn off all the fans, the air conditioning, and it's still loud. So what I've had to do is typically in editing, in using my DAW, I end up having to kind of lower the amplitude in the spaces where I'm not speaking. And it seems to be okay, but I was wondering what your thoughts are, or anyone's thoughts are, on an external or an outboard noise gate. Because there is one, there's one built into Adobe Audition, which is the DAW that I'm using, but I find that it ends up, and again, I'm really new to all of this, but it's clipping, it sometimes will clip the audio, the high point, like kind of the front or the tail ends of where I'm speaking, or it just sounds a little bit, I think the word that I've read is like it's sort of phased, where the audio sounds a little bit weird, like not natural. So I did it one time to test it, and then I didn't like the way it sounded, but a colleague had recommended, because he said it works for him, getting an outboard gate. And so what are your thoughts on that?
There's no reason why you can't use the gate expander in Adobe Audition and have it work well for you.
Okay. How do I?
When it comes to clipping the beginning or the ends of words, that's just a matter of setting, like you can set many parameters when it comes to a noise gate, including how long the delay is before it clicks in, how long the delay is after it clicks in before it clicks back off again.
Yes.
There's lots of parameters that need to be adjusted just so in order to have it work well for you. I really do recommend, for the $100 or something that it would cost you, to go to George Whittam. You can go to georgethetech.com. I'm not sure if you're familiar with George, but he really is
I am, yeah.
He's just awesome. And he would be able to, in half an hour, sort that all out for you and just give you a preset that you just turn the preset on, and it would work for 95% of the work that you do.
Okay.
You really don't need to go to an external piece of hardware. I mean, you can, but an external piece of hardware only because you need a gate is really, it's not the way you need to go. You can do it in software.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Jim is adding that he uses a metal frame with sound blankets and a moving blanket that he's put over the top for a ceiling. Again, it's similar to the PVC pipe idea, except Jim's is a little sturdier, that's all. So, Jim, thanks for that. Who else has got a question for us or a comment? As I continue to make a couple notes here.
Hey, Graham.
Hey there, Haley.
Question that's just come up listening to everybody is I'm just wondering. My husband and I are looking at downsizing to a condo in the next coming years, and that's fine. But I don't want to leave my studio, and so I'm wondering what kinds of challenges people face living in a condo or apartment, building their booth, sound-wise. Just what are some of the challenges they face? Neighbors, I'm sure, are an issue, and things like that. But I'm just trying to kind of look into the future a little bit and make plans and sort it out properly.
Haley, is this a full-time gig for you? Like, do you make a living as a voice actor?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So if you are making a living as a voice actor, and if this is something that is for real, and you're probably going to downsize, you're probably going to want to make sure that you're moving into a place that's going to be large enough to put a booth into. And then I really do recommend going to Studio Bricks or Whisper Room or one of those types of companies that manufacture kind of modular booths, like booths that can be assembled and disassembled, and consider that. An acquaintance of mine, a friend of mine, Joey, who she lives in New York, and she lives right on 7th Avenue, very busy, very noisy place. And she put a Studio Bricks booth into her apartment and has never looked back. She just thinks it's awesome. And, you know, there are ways to, you know, we use walk-in closets and things like that. But if you're in any sort of metropolitan area, you're going to find yourself having to record at, you know, 11 o'clock at night and 1 o'clock at night in order to get enough quiet in order to make sure there's no extraneous noise in your recordings. So using a vocal booth like a Whisper Room or like a Studio Bricks booth is really probably the way to go. It's an investment, though. I mean,
Sure.
a Whisper Room or a Studio Bricks booth of a decent-ish size, by the time it gets shipped to you, is going to be anywhere between, you know, $6,000 and $10,000. So it's not an inexpensive consideration. On the plus side, though, is that they retain their value, and that you buy a Studio Bricks booth for $8,000. You know, 5 years from now, you'll be able to sell it for $8,000 probably. They really do retain their value.
Is there any concern about the weight at all of them? I know sometimes there are limitations within condo boards and things like that. You know, if you're going to haul a grand piano up there or something of that nature. So I have no clue if those types of booths, I've been looking into some of them, if there's any concern with the weight.
There is a concern about the weight, because these booths, like even the small, I just happened to be looking at the specs for the Studio Bricks booth just the other day, and even the smallest one weighs, I think it's around 1,000 pounds or 1,100 pounds. I mean, these things are built solidly. They have to be in order to be effective when it comes to, you know, keeping extraneous sound out. So, on the other hand, I don't know of any situations, especially if you're moving into newer construction buildings that are concrete construction, like the floors are poured concrete. Usually you're not going to have any problems with weight restrictions there. If it's an older building that might have beam floors, it's something you'll definitely have to check into with the condo association before you move in. I still think you should probably be okay, but it is definitely a consideration. Make sure that you are, from an engineering standpoint, you're not going to end up in the person's dining room below you.
That would not be good.
That would not be good.
And just a side note, thanks so much, Graham. I just love these little meetups every Sunday, and I really appreciate your time and everyone's openness with sharing information and just helping to make it better for everybody. Thank you so much.
I think the voiceover business is so awesome. I mean, no matter who I meet in the voiceover business, and I've met some really, you know, A-list actors in New York and Los Angeles, and they're just the nicest people, and everyone is so giving, and there's no kind of professional jealousies. It really is one of the nicest group of people. I mean, and I've had a number of different careers in my life, and the voiceover community is by far the nicest. It really is. And I appreciate your kind words. Thank you so much, Haley.
You're welcome.
Got another couple of minutes. Let's try and get one more question in before we wind it up tonight.
maybe I'll throw out one final question if no one else has anything else to add.
Please do.
Yeah. So I'm one of these voiceover people that is totally flown under the radar. If you Google me, you won't find me. I've just kind of built my business on word of mouth and relationships. I'm very good at, understanding the business side. I've always been a small business person and just reaching out to people directly. But I'm at the point now where my kids are older and various commitments have lifted off of me that I would like to market myself properly. So I'm looking at hiring a marketing firm and that kind of thing. And I don't have a problem with that, getting a website up and those kinds of things. But one of the things that's been really kind of paramount in my mind is sort of, I understand having presence out there with a website, going after agents, those kinds of things. They're fairly easy to research. But how you present yourself, that's kind of what I'm throwing around in my mind. And I think, being yourself is very, very important. But I tend to have a little bit of a business head, having both my husband and I are small business people. And I always kind of think of the hiring side and what people are looking for. And I'm not really talking about morphing myself into what they're looking for, but kind of putting forth my best assets. And I'm kind of wondering from your experience, Graham, and as well as other people out there, what they kind of find, feedback that they get from potential clients. I'm sure part of it, a great part of it, is how you sound. What you're delivering as a product in terms of your vocal style, in terms of the sound quality, things like that are going to put you ahead of the game right off the bat. But are there other qualities that you find that clients are looking for? I mean, in my own mind, what I've dealt with my clients so far, just competence, being on time, providing your things in a timely way, really trying to tap into the final product, making it successful, making their project successful. Those are the kinds of things that have helped me along. But I just wanted to throw it out there. Is there something I'm not thinking of, or that would be worth me keeping in mind as I move forward in my marketing and how I present myself to potential clients?
I don't think that there's very much that we do that's brain surgery. I really don't. I think that you have hit just in, the last 45 seconds, most of the key things that matter. And let's set aside performance as you just suggested that we do. I think that beyond that, it's reliability. Don't be a flake. Like, that's the problem with a lot of voice actors. And I say this with much love and respect, everybody, but voice actors are flaky. They don't follow through. They're not on time for sessions. They, silly things like they send audition files and the files are labeled audio 1 or my audition, things like that. I mean, it sounds, Haley, to me as if you're going to be ahead of the game, right from the start, just because of the amount of experience you've had with other small businesses. Because believe me, whether you're selling yourself as a voice actor, whether you're selling yourself as a florist, whether you're selling yourself as a dentist, the same principles apply. They really do. There's nothing that we do that's very special. Our performances can be magical. I don't take anything away from that. But when it comes to, people call us, we do what they ask us to do. We send an invoice in a timely manner. We ask if there's anything else we can do to help finish their project, and then we move on to the next. I mean, there's nothing particularly special about what we do other than the artistry that we provide. So if you set that aside, if you set the art side aside, the artistry aside, then it's just a matter of being dependable. Don't be a flake. Send your invoices on time, and always think from the client's perspective. What else can I do to help the client be successful? I think it really is that simple.
Yeah, well, thanks. I really appreciate you just kind of affirming what my experiences have been and observations as well. And believe me, musicians are very much in that same set of problems, you know, just in terms of how they present themselves and flaking out and yeah, that kind of thing. It doesn't work. Everybody's got a job to do. And incidentally, we own a flower shop, so that's really interesting that you used florists as
There you go.
an example. Yeah, so very good. Well done.
EJ suggests, just before we close up here tonight, EJ suggests that another thing you might want to do is check out some of the voiceover, like online shows and podcasts. VO Buzz Weekly, VO Boss is another one, which I actually haven't gotten into yet, but I have to because I'm hearing good things about it. I think it's Ann Ganguza and Gabby Nistico, if I remember right, doing VO Boss. VOBS, of course, the Voiceover Body Shop. There's lots of good suggestions on all of these VO shows and podcasts, which could be helpful as well. So with that said, going to call it a night. We actually had a fairly good conversation tonight, even though there was relatively few of us on the line tonight. So I hope you all enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend. Drink lots of beer and eat lots of hamburgers and steak and hot dogs tomorrow. And look forward to catching up with you all again next week. So have a good night. Have a good week. Book lots of work. Send out lots of auditions. And we'll see you next week. Good night, everybody.